Welcome back for another deep dive with us.
Yeah.
Today we're going to be looking at The Pathless Path by Paul Millerd.
Okay.
And we've got some really interesting excerpts here, I think.
Yeah.
About
Yeah, and one of the most interesting things, I think, is how Millerd sort of like challenges this idea of a default path.
Right.
You know, this idea that you're supposed to go to school, get a good job, buy a house.
Yeah, it's almost like society's checklist.
Yeah.
Like you graduate, good job, marriage, family, like.
Totally. And there's actually a psychological basis for that.
Is there really?
Yeah. Yeah. Researchers called these expectations life scripts. It's like almost like an internalized blueprint for how our lives should unfold.
Interesting.
Particularly in those early years up to like age 35.
Oh.
But, you know, Millard's whole point is that maybe we need to like rewrite those scripts.
Okay, so where does this whole default path idea even come from in the first place?
Well, it's actually relatively recent.
Is it?
Yeah, Millerd ties it back to like post-World War II in the U.S.
Right.
When the economy was booming.
Right.
And suddenly stable full-time jobs became like the marker of success.
Okay.
So it was the whole foundation of the American dream.
Yeah.
Good job equals you can afford a house, raise a family, all of that.
Yeah.
Have a certain level of social standing.
But things have changed a lot since then.
Right.
I mean, like with the gig economy and, you know, people working remotely, more entrepreneurship.
Totally.
Like, is the default path even really relevant anymore?
I think it's definitely evolving.
Okay.
But, you know, what's interesting is that Millerd doesn't just focus on like changing job markets.
Yeah.
He questions the very assumption that full-time work, even a good job,
Right.
automatically equals fulfillment.
It's that boiling frog metaphor, isn't it? It's like if you slowly immerse yourself in discomfort,
Right.
you may not even realize it's happening.
Exactly.
You just become complacent.
Yeah. And he brings up this concept from David Graeber, you know, Graeber's work on bullshit jobs. These jobs that even the people doing them kind of find meaningless.
Right.
And Millerd even shares, you know, some of his own experiences from like his early career working in these prestigious consulting firms.
Wow.
And even while advising CEOs, he was like increasingly disillusioned
Wow.
by these like pointless tasks he was assigned.
So it's like he's living the dream on paper,
Total.
but feeling totally unfulfilled.
Yeah, yeah.
What was it that finally made him question it all?
Well, a major turning point for Millerd was actually a health crisis.
Oh, wow.
He was diagnosed with Lyme disease.
Oh, no.
And, you know, it kind of forced him to really confront his own mortality and reevaluate his priorities.
I can only imagine how going through something like that
Right.
would make you question what really matters.
Totally. It was a real wake-up call for him.
Yeah.
And you know what's fascinating is that this difficult experience led to what psychologists call post-traumatic growth. So, you know, he emerged from this period with like a renewed sense of purpose. Oh, wow.
This drive to explore alternative paths.
Right.
Paths that, you know, aligned with his values.
So instead of just like quitting his job completely,
Yeah.
he kind of started experimenting with different ways of working and living.
Exactly. He started, you know, prototyping a life beyond the corporate world.
Okay. So he was exploring things like career coaching, writing, speaking engagements, trying different things out.
Exactly. And this period of experimentation, you know, ultimately led him to articulate this concept of the pathless path.
Okay, so what exactly does Millerd mean by the pathless path?
Well,
Like, it seems like he's offering an alternative
yeah,
to this default path we've been talking about.
Totally.
But what does it actually look like?
That's a great question, and it's something that we'll dive into deeper in the next part of our deep dive.
Okay.
But I think at its core, the pathless path embraces uncertainty and discomfort.
Right.
It requires a shift in mindset,
Okay.
a willingness to let go of that need for a clear roadmap and predefined milestones. So it's exciting, but kind of terrifying at the same time, like stepping off a cliff without knowing what's at the bottom.
You've hit the nail on the head.
Okay.
It's about trusting yourself to navigate uncharted territory,
Right.
to discover your own unique path, and that's where the real adventure begins.
All right. Well, you've definitely piqued my curiosity. We're going to explore the key principles of the pathless path
Okay.
and what it could mean for our listeners when we come back.
Sounds good.
All right. So we've talked about this idea of a pathless path, embracing uncertainty, forging your own way.
Right.
But how do you actually do that?
Yeah.
It sounds inspiring, but where do you even begin?
Well, that's where Millerd gets really practical.
Okay.
He breaks it down into concrete steps. And one of the most crucial, he says, is prototyping your leap.
Prototyping your leap.
Yeah.
Okay, what is that?
So instead of, you know, just like making a drastic life change overnight,
Right.
you test the waters first.
Okay.
You experiment with different ways of working, living, being before fully committing.
So it's not just like quitting your job with no plan.
Right. It's more about gathering data.
Yeah.
Getting a feel for what that different path might actually look like.
Okay, so like dipping your toes in the water instead of just diving in head first.
Exactly.
Okay. But even with that prototyping approach, I mean, stepping off that path is still pretty scary.
Oh, absolutely. Fear is definitely a factor.
Yeah.
But Millard argues that wonder can be a powerful antidote to that.
Wonder?
Yeah, he's not talking about like naive optimism,
Right.
but more a sense of curiosity and openness to the unknown, embracing possibilities instead of, getting bogged down by worst case scenarios.
So instead of like, what if this goes wrong?
Right.
It's more like, what if this is amazing?
Exactly. Yeah, it's a real shift in perspective.
Yeah, but what about the practicalities? Like, okay, you're intrigued by this idea, but have no idea where to start.
Right.
What do you do?
Well, Millard talks about finding path experts.
Path experts.
Yeah, people who have already walked a path.
Okay.
Similar to the one you're considering.
So mentors, role models.
Exactly. Could even be just, individuals a few steps ahead of you.
Right.
Offering insights and guidance.
So finding your tribe.
Yeah.
Those who understand this unconventional approach.
Precisely. And Millard really stresses,
Yeah.
Seeking out people whose experiences resonate with your aspirations because they've navigated, all the challenges, the doubts, the uncertainties.
Right. And come out the other side.
Exactly. Their wisdom can be invaluable.
But let's be real.
Yeah.
One of the biggest fears is, the financial piece.
Of course.
Leaving a stable income can be terrifying.
Right.
Especially if you're used to a certain level of security.
Totally. And Millard addresses this head on with a concept he calls reimagining money.
Reimagining money.
Yeah.
He challenges this really deep-seated belief
that
our self-worth is tied to our income.
Right. Like you are what you earn.
Exactly.
Yeah. And he encourages us to decouple those two things, shift our perspective on what financial security really means.
So it's not about like amassing wealth.
Right.
But redefining your relationship with money.
Totally. And he actually shares a personal story about this.
Oh, really?
About turning down a job offer. With a much higher salary than he was used to.
Wow.
And realizing that clinging to, a certain income level was actually holding him back from pursuing work that really mattered to him.
Wow.
And that ties into another key concept, designing for liking work.
Designing for liking work.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, so many people just tolerate their jobs instead of actively seeking work that they actually enjoy.
Totally. I think that resonates with a lot of people.
I think so. And Millard really flips the script on this.
Yeah.
He says we should prioritize work that energizes us, challenges us, aligns with our values, even if it doesn't fit that, traditional mold of success. And he believes that when we engage in work we genuinely like, it creates what he calls these virtuous meaning cycles.
Virtuous meaning cycles.
Yeah.
What's that?
Think of it like a positive feedback loop. When you're doing work that lights you up, it naturally leads to more opportunities, connections, experiences that enhance your life.
So it's like your passion fuels your success.
Yeah.
Which fuels your passion.
That's exactly.
And that's a key part of the Pathless Path.
Right.
It's aligning your actions with your values, aspirations, your own definition of success.
It's about creating a life where work becomes a source of joy and fulfillment.
But let's be honest, the Pathless Path isn't always easy.
No.
There are going to be challenges, setbacks, moments of doubt.
Of course.
How does Millard address that?
He emphasizes playing the long game.
Okay.
Thinking beyond immediate gratification and focusing on building a sustainable path that we can thrive on for the long haul.
So it's not about sprinting towards a goal, but embarking on like a lifelong journey.
Exactly. A journey of self-discovery and growth.
And one technique he suggests is working backward.
Yes.
What's that?
He says start by defining what you don't want.
Okay.
Your worst case scenarios, your biggest fears.
Interesting.
By inverting the problem, you gain a clearer perspective on what to avoid and what to prioritize.
So it's like that saying, if you don't know where you're going, any road will take you there.
Exactly.
We've gone through a lot of interesting ideas from the Pathless Path.
Yeah.
I'm curious to hear, like as a listener, what's really resonating with you so far?
Yeah, for me, it's that balance that Millard brings of introspection and action.
Right.
He doesn't just, throw out some philosophical ideas about work and fulfillment. He actually gives you tools to create that life that you want.
Yeah, and he provides like so much practical advice, actionable steps people can take.
Yeah, and one of the most basic things he says is you have to start by reflecting on your values, your motivations.
So asking yourself, like, what really matters to me?
Yeah.
What kind of work would make me excited to get out of bed, even if it didn't pay that much?
Exactly. It's about getting honest with yourself.
Yeah.
You know, figuring out what drives you, what gives you a sense of purpose.
And then letting those values guide your decisions.
Totally. And once you have a clearer sense of those values, Millard says, work backward.
Work backward.
Yeah. Start with your ideal lifestyle, that vision of a life that feels truly fulfilling, and then, you know, reverse engineer the steps to create it.
I love that idea.
Yeah.
Like, you know, designing your life with intention.
Totally. Taking control, being the architect of your own future.
So how would you, like, practically guide a listener through that process?
Well, I think it starts with specificity.
Okay.
You know, what would your ideal day look like?
Yeah.
Where would you live? What kind of work would you do? Who would you be surrounded by? Like, paint a picture of that life.
And then start connecting the dots. Like, what skills would you need? What resources, what steps could you take?
Exactly, even small steps. To bridge that gap.
Between where you are and where you want to be.
Yeah. And Millard says it doesn't have to be this grand vision.
Okay.
You know, you can start small. Try side projects, volunteer online courses, anything to just kind of dip your toes in.
It's about that active exploration.
Totally taking ownership. Instead of just waiting for, you know, the right opportunity to show up.
But I think sometimes what holds people back is that fear of judgment or failure.
Absolutely.
What advice would you give to someone struggling with that?
You know, Millard talks about the importance of finding your tribe. So, you know, mentors, communities, online groups, even just close friends who understand this unconventional approach.
Yeah, like surrounding yourself with people who get it.
Exactly, because they can make all the difference.
You're not alone on this journey.
Yes. Right? There's so many other people out there, you know, forging their own paths, challenging the status quo.
And I think that brings us to like a really crucial mindset for this whole idea. Embracing uncertainty.
Oh, yeah.
It's not about eliminating risk, but about navigating it with resilience, a sense of adventure.
And Millard talks about this shift from a scarcity mindset to an abundance mindset.
So instead of worrying about what you lack,
Yeah.
you focus on the possibilities,
Oh, exactly.
even if things are uncertain.
It's about trusting that even if you don't have all the answers right now, that path will reveal itself.
As you keep moving forward.
Right, as you experiment, as you learn and grow.
It's having that faith in yourself and in the journey.
I love that it's about releasing that need to control every single thing.
Yeah.
And just embracing the beauty of not knowing.
You know, it's those unexpected twists and turns that often lead to the best things. Well, this has been such an inspiring look at Paul Millard's The Pathless Path.
It has.
We've just scratched the surface of his ideas.
Yeah.
But I hope it's, you know, sparked something for our listeners.
Me too.
And maybe inspired them to think about what their own pathless path could look like.
Yeah. If you could design your life without limitations, without those societal expectations or self-doubt, what would it look like?
What would you dare to create?
That's the question.
Dream big, explore fearlessly, never stop learning.
Love it.
Until next time, happy deep diving.